So for this recap, we're covering both episodes 4 and 5 because we're backed up. So let's start off with episode 4. In episode 4, when we get reintroduced to Rudy, it's been 2 years and Rudy still is having problems with erectile dysfunction. But while things haven't gotten better in that arena, at least his magic has become rather powerful to the point where he can single-handedly defeat a red dragon. Now, there is a disclaimer by Rudy that the red dragon was on his last legs, but still, defeating a dragon on your own is still a noteworthy task. But while killing that dragon is very much a big deal, one thing that's also a big deal is the fact that Elena Lise, I don't know how to pronounce her name, either way, the elf one that has a very high sex drive, she finds Rudy and she kind of latches onto him for not only episode 4 but also episode 5, and it's not 100% clear why. I mean, granted, she thinks he's a cool dude, she knows her father, she knows his father, and at the top of that also there's a Roxy connection, but as for why she sticks around and they kind of build some weird kind of friendship, it's hard to say. I mean, in some ways you can see that Rudy is definitely attracted to her, and if he could, he would probably sleep with her maybe, but again, erectile dysfunction. So they kind of developed this weird brother-sister relationship that for some, like Soul, who becomes very close to Elise, it's sort of uncomfortable. Though not as uncomfortable as finding out that in order to keep any drama from happening, the elf lady is paying men to keep their mouth shut. And not shut about what she does and how she does it, but keep it shut in terms of don't start confessing your love for her or making things complicated for her life. With all that said, Rudy has a visit from Man God, which leads to him seeing his old self, and for the first time in a long time, even though Rudy's old self to his new self, who's all pecked out and everything, are very separate, he doesn't really get emotional or agitated about seeing himself in this form. If anything, he's just agitated with Man God because Man God plays too damn much. But one of the things that Man God pushes is that instead of Rudy going to find his father, going to find his mother, which could end in potential disaster, he pushes him to go to an old university and to look into the mass teleportation event. Being that Rudy and Man God don't have the best relationship, there is a part of him that wants to rebel, but when Man God sweetens the deal and say, hey, you do the research, your erectile dysfunction goes away, that's all Rudy needs to hear. And with that, Rudy, who by the way had an invitation to go to the university without having to pay tuition or really take any classes, he decides with the elf lady to go off onto that journey. And as he does that, we learn that Sophie is already at the school because that's where Ariel is set up since she's technically in exile. So it means that those two are going to end up on a collision course, which leads us into episode 5. In episode 5, it's further explained why Ellen Lise, I really hope I'm pronouncing her name right. Either way, it's further kind of defined why she is the way she is. She pays off the men to keep them quiet and from causing her any drama, and the reason why she sleeps with so many men is because she's cursed. It isn't clear who cursed her, but at this point, it doesn't really feel like a curse because she enjoys it way too much. And it seems part of the reason why she's following Rudy, at least the reason she vocalizes, is because now she has an attraction to young men. So going to this university just means her having a buffet of them. Now, how exactly did she get accepted? That's hard to say, since it's been a very long time since we've seen her in combat, and we don't know if she has the qualifications to be at this school, never mind how she's going to pay for tuition and all that. But Rudy doesn't really pay her too much mind because he's focused on getting this whole erectile dysfunction issue over. So his focus is on studying. He does a trial with Fitz, aka Sophie, who he doesn't know is Sophie because apparently glasses are like not Batman, Clark Kent and Superman. Put him off, take him on. Maybe that changes things in this world. Who knows? But point of the matter is, in order to be accepted, he has to challenge her because they both don't need to do incantations to do spells. He quickly finishes that battle and makes her look like she's not studying at all. And with that, he's accepted, given a dorm room, and he's off to study. But unfortunately for Rudy, there's complications. Most of the complications come from misunderstandings, but as usual with Rudy, his method of trying to deal with people usually comes from making himself small in order to make the other person feel bigger and hopefully less agitated with his presence. This is a case of when he meets Cliff, who we saw in Eris's Over, where she was a goblin slayer. When he meets Linnea and Procina. Originally, Linnea didn't like him very much, but at the very least, while he does have not the best record of meeting people, including his cousin Luke, there is Zenoba from last season when Rudy got trapped because of his connection to Roxy, and he met Zenoba, who's one of the princes of a kingdom that I can't think of offhand, who loved his sculpture of Roxy and now calls him master even in modern times. That's one friend who at least gets him in a way and is able to also give him some of the gossip and information about everybody, which helps him navigate things to a point. However, Rudy ends up in the women's dorm area at the wrong time. And what makes it the wrong time is Sophie was apparently cleaning Ariel's underwear. Her panties flew out. That's Ariel's, not Sophie's. Panties flew out the window. Rudy caught it, holds it up to the sky because his favorite totem to praise is underwear. And then somebody catches him doing that. Specifically, this woman called Golady, who's ape-like. And with that, it seems like Rudy was about to experience the same kind of bullying, harassment, and embarrassment he experienced back in his previous life. Thankfully, Sylvie interrupts, threatens everybody's life because it's a lot of the young ladies there at the university who's already crowding around Rudy. But again, Sylvie saves him. And strangely, even as they spend more and more time together and have more and more conversations, it doesn't click in Rudy's head that, hey, I know you. And that's with him noting that he's still looking for this one person from his hometown that's missing. But I look at it this way. The longer it takes for him to realize it and the closer he gets to Sophie, now that she's older, silver hair and everything, maybe the better it'll be when those two realize, well, I think Sophie knows who Rudy is already, so that's not a problem. But when Rudy finally realizes who Sophie is, that may allow him to finally get past his Edie situation, or, as I believe we're going to know in the highlights, it'll make it so that his Edie situation, if it still continues, he may put less pressure on himself because he realizes he can be loved even if he can't necessarily get hard. So, getting into the review portion, the highlight for me is that in terms of time jumps throughout this season so far, they're all very well timed. The time jump that we see in episode 4 is perfectly timed because at that point, Rudy seemingly, through his relationship with Soul, I want to say kind of finished a lot of the healing that he needed to have when it comes to Paul and maybe the baggage he has with any type of parental figure. And granted, there's a lot of stuff we could have seen and went through when it comes to Paul and Rudy's relationship, even if it was just in a montage, but you can't have it all. Plus, no anime covers every last little storyline. But with that said, it still was beautiful to see how it went from two men kind of at each other's throats. Well, more so at Rudy's originally, just because there was a representative put out there instead of like a realness. And then once Rudy was real with him, he found camaraderie, friendship, and a type of relationship which he probably has. I want to say he never had it, but I remember the old Rudy did have a friend, but he pushed him away. So maybe it's just Rudy also healing in that form too, about allowing himself to be vulnerable with somebody and let them see him at his worst, and when he's at it, and when he feels at his worst, and just allowing him in. Either way, the time jump is at a perfect time, since with Rudy now going into a university, which is a school environment, it means he now has to face multiple things that kind of ruined his life in his past. Whether it is bullying, whether it's the lack of dating, whether it's the lack of relationships. I feel that all the stuff that Vanguard might potentially be trying to do is really have it so that this whole new life that Rudy has is not always just fun and games, you being one of the most powerful mages around, but you are going to really have to work on yourself personally. And I would say for the most part, Rudy has been up to the task, but this is going to be the real test, since yes, his relationship with his parents wasn't that great in his past life, but one of the things that ruined him was his relationship with people his own age. So here's to Rudy experiencing all the stuff that he can as a, I don't even know how old he is anymore, but as a young man who's now really exposed to all different types of people, all different types of girls, and hopefully between learning how to have non-sexual friendships and friendship in which he has some type of attraction to someone, he can really not combine the two. He can finally show that he has the social skills, the communication ability, and everything that he needs in order to have as normal as a life as you can in a world where there's dragons, demons, beasts, and etc. Which leads to the second highlight, which is, as noted, just being happy that this show didn't take forever and a day for Rudy and Sophie to end up on the same path. All I want for those two is just to have a cute relationship. And being that Sophie has known Rudy for so long, even if there was a more than 3-year gap in between, I'm just hoping that with her looking out for him, getting to know who he is in his present form instead of just when he was a kid, she can fall for him all over again, and maybe Rudy can feel the same, because it seems that the whole erectile dysfunction thing and its timing, whether it was God's doing or maybe just something in Rudy's head, is very much rooted in him not becoming Paul, and at the same time not getting to take advantage of him now being generically attractive by having abs and all that. Instead, it seems the idea is that he needs to have an emotional connection, that he needs to really get to know this person and love them for who they are, not just what they look like. So that, yes, Rudy may always be a pervert, but at the same time, he's going to be a pervert that has some type of substance. And when it comes to his perverted nature, it won't be like anyone willing, sort of like the elf, but more so him being perverted with his partner, which could potentially be Sophie. Though, who knows, with the way this show is sometimes, imagine if Ariel or somebody else kind of gains his interest, or even Eris shows up randomly, since Cliff does mention Eris, but doesn't necessarily say where she is. So there's always a chance she could pop in, but I want to say I doubt it, but at the same time, imagine, based off of how she looked and acted back then and how Rudy is acting and looks right now, that could lead to some, I mean, granted, it's going to be very traumatic for Rudy, but at the same time, it could lead to some interesting conversations and perhaps closure, which could really allow Rudy to move on with his life and be with Sophie, Roxy, or whoever. Overall, when it comes to both episodes, it really feels like it's just meant to set up what's coming next. Rudy's now in the university. He's given a task to find out why the mass transportation event happened. And at the same time, it's building the possibility that with a lot of characters from season 1 popping up, He's going to have to start really learning how to have friendships, how to have relationships, whether they're romantic or not. And being the fact that he's in one setting and he's not bouncing around right now, and may not for at least 2 to 3 to maybe 5 years, it means really getting to know these people on a personal, perhaps intimate level. And considering that Rudy didn't have a lot of experience with that in his past life, in his current life is going to really show whether or not he's learned anything, or if he's really just sitting out this representative to try to get by and doesn't have those social communication skills that we like to assume that he's been developing and trying to master just as much as his magic.